Dead bedroom after the kids. That's our conversation. And if you're watching this is probably a real issue. So hang with us. If you haven't subscribed, please do that. If you have a question, put it in the box. We will get back to you as soon as possible. Dead bedroom. Now, as soon as I say that, you kind of get the idea of what we're talking about. Either sex has become less existent, non-existent, or challenging. And when something's being negatively reinforced, it's often avoided. And now I do understand raising a family, she can be tired, you can be tired, you have schedules and all that kind of stuff, but now the kids are gone. You have probably another 10 or 15 hours a week of not going to this or that, or trying to make sure this happens or that happens, or preparing for this situation. So why is it that so many couples end up with less sex after the kids leave? Well, let me give you a couple ideas that can be helpful. First of all, marriage has a structure and it's organic. And if that structure is not happening, you have unhappy people inside the marriage. Unhappy people inside a marriage are less likely to have more sex. Now, let's talk about those basic structures, and then we got a few other ideas. Number one, are you going on dates? If you're not spending quality time together, you're not going to want to be together. And a date is 3 or 4 hours of fun. It is not staying at home, it's doing something. You can rotate them back and forth. Get out of the house, do something fun. Socially, do you both have separate friends so your marriage isn't carrying the burden of meeting all your relationship needs? Thirdly, are you able to talk and share about your feelings? I have a great book called Emotional Fitness, another book called Intimacy, a 100-Day Guide to Lasting Relationships, which is a great re-entry into the phase of relationship you're in to be able to communicate your feelings with each other. And men, you can be just as good at feelings or better than your wife. And if you are not good at feelings, this is a turnoff to your wife. She wants to be heard emotionally. She wants you to ask her questions about her emotions, validate some of her emotions, and also for you to be able to do the same, to be able to share your heart. And I know I've got 4 degrees and no one taught me how to do this. In both those books, I teach you how to do that. It's very important to have that emotional connection. Also, spiritual connection. If you've had a spiritual connection in the past and you've lost it or you've never had it, go on a spiritual journey together and find some spirituality you can both be a part of and a community you can be a part of, be that a church or another form of spirituality. Connect with each other spiritually, okay? And if you've never met Jesus, like, he's a great lover, like that'd be a great way to go, or go the way you can go. Also, sex, having sex in a healthy way, in a way that you can agree upon. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. And finances can be a tension. You know, if you haven't prepared for the kids to be in college, if you're living in debt, these are issues that will need to be resolved because it creates tension and it puts you in a place of survival. After raising kids for 20 plus years, you're still in a place of survival instead of abundance. And finding out how to save money, invest money, and move towards your future with confidence relaxes the whole system for both of you. So that's your structures, and just go through your mind and check off what you're doing well and what you're not doing well. Look at that because that affects the bedroom. Now, having good sex, let me give you that. Just because you're having sex throughout decades does not mean you're having good quality of sex. I want to give you 2 or 3 really good ideas here. Number 1, let me give you 3 tips to having great sex. Eyes open. It's really important you look at each other during sex, because when you have sex, you neurologically attach to each other if you're looking at each other. If he's in fantasy and she's in a fantasy, you're attaching to whatever that fantasy is. You're not attaching to the other soul that's in front of you. Therefore, you're not attracted to the soul that's in front of you, and you're not hungry for that soul. You're hungry for the fantasy or just the blank space that you're in. So eyes open, some kind of lights on. Doesn't have to be theatrical lighting. Candle lights, fine. And nurturing conversation, talking during sex. I'm not talking about dirty talk. I'm talking about respectful, loving, connecting conversation that you can enjoy each other, which shows that you're present during sex. So many couples have disconnected sex, which is dissatisfying for at least women and probably the man as well, where they don't feel like it's about being connected and we're one and we're friends and we're lovers and we can be creative. It's more something that we do than 2 beings being together. And so if you're guilty of not eyes open, no lights on, and no conversation, the quality of your sex, just by not doing it correctly, will limit your appetites for each other. Another thing that can be harmful is not being in agreement on sexual frequency. In that book, I talked about Upgrade Your Sex Life. That book covers how to create a sexual agreement, understanding we want to have sex. Well, how often? Talk about that. Once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, etc. And then figure out how you can both mutually rotate the initiation. And I've worked with couples for almost 40 years, and I'm amazed at how often they never use words to ask for sex. In Upgrade Your Sex Life, we talk about that. Sit across the chair, practice asking each other to be sexual. I want to make love to you, some positive way, so that you can actually initiate. Because I found couples who the reason they weren't having sex is because they didn't know how to initiate, and they both thought the other sex should be the one initiating. Well, if both people think the other person should be doing something, something doesn't get done. Having agreement and understanding of how often you want to do that, how often each person is going to initiate, and then set up consequences if you don't keep your word. So that if I say I'm going to initiate once a week, that I do, and if I don't, well, then I make you a meal, or I, do laundry, or I, do something that's not fun for me. Set it up so that there's a structure to your sexuality, because sometimes the lack of sex is really the lack of structure, not the lack of desire. And desire comes through reinforcement. So the less you have sex, the less you desire sex. Now, another thing that can be happening, and these are things that can be wrong, all right? Depression, one of the symptoms of depression is low sex drive. Well, if someone is, sleeping a lot or not able to sleep, or their energy's low, difficulty concentrating, worthless feelings, low energy most of the time, they might have depression. Or they might have low thyroid. Getting your blood tested. They might also have low hormone issues like testosterone in women and men. One of the symptoms is a lack of sexual desire. So get your blood work done, because you're older, there's menopause, there's hormone changes in men. We decline in hormones over our aging, and so it's important to know where you are in that process and what you want to do to be healthy, because hormones affect everything, including your sexuality. Now, on the other side, there can be unresolved issues. Addiction. If a man or woman is masturbating to pornography, fantasy, or having sexual behavior outside the marriage, that's a secret. There's going to be huge issues about wanting to be intimate with someone who thinks you're one person, but you're not that person. So you'll avoid that. Okay, so ask each other about pornography and masturbation. Ask each other about Facebook and intrigue relationships. Make sure there's nothing outside the marriage that's distracting you. Another thing is what we call intimacy anorexia, which is also an addiction process, but it's an addiction to withholding intimacy from your spouse. I'm going to go through these characteristics really quickly, but we have lots of YouTubes on intimacy anorexia. Check those out, or get the book, or go to intimacyanorexia.com. A lot of information there for both the anorexic and for the spouse. We call them married and alone. So here's the characteristics. If you've got 5 of these, you're probably dealing with something that needs professional help, and you want to call Heart to Heart Counseling Center at 719-278-3708, because we really know what we're doing with that. And if someone's not certified in intimacy anorexia, they can be less helpful for sure. So here's characteristics. Number 1, they're so busy they have no time just for you. They're able to give time to everybody else, but not you. If a problem comes up in the marriage, they blame you before taking responsibility. They withhold love, especially the way you like to be loved, whether that's time, gifts, touch, praise. You won't get what you want, even though you've told them many, many times what you want. They withhold spiritually, even if they're really high up in their spiritual hierarchy in their community. They will withhold sex in a couple ways. 1, they won't have sex with you. 2, they will negatively reinforce you during sex by saying unkind things during sex to make you not want to do it again. But also, they will not be present during sex. She will never open her eyes. He will never open his eyes. There's no words spoken. You feel alone before, during, and after sex. You feel less satisfied than more fulfilled. That's a symptom of intimacy anorexia. They're unwilling or unable to share their feelings with you. They use anger or silence as a way to control you in the marriage situation. They have ongoing or ungrounded criticism of you. Sometimes they control around money issues, but here's kind of something I've heard at least 1,000 times in my office in Colorado Springs doing 5-day intensives. Dr. Weiss, I feel married and alone. I feel unwanted. I feel like I'm the manager of a business, but not necessarily in relationship with the owner. If you're having those feelings, definitely check out Intimacy Anorexia. Now, the last thing I want to share with you about deadbed is just misunderstanding each other sexually. In the book, Upgrade Your Sex Life, I strongly encourage you to get that or get the video, because I outline the 5 sexual expressions. We all have different sexual expressions. And sometimes couples are just missing each other because they think, well, they're supposed to be like me sexually. I'm patience. And so they're patience. No, you're patience and they might be fun, okay? And we have to connect each other where we are on our design, the way we're made sexually. And if you're missing each other, it almost feels like negative reinforcement. It feels like I'm never getting that itch really scratched. I'm not really feeling satiated because I'm not hearing you say you want me. With your eyes closed and not talking to me, I feel tolerated, not wanted. Well, if my sex language or my sexual expression is desire, I want to be wanted. And if your spouse knows that, they can communicate that, and we actually walk through the entire arc of sexuality, the sexual environment, the invitation to sexuality, foreplay, during sex and after sex, depending on your sexual expression, what needs to be heard so the person's getting the optimal pleasure. And again, that's positive reinforcement. So if your sexuality has more positive reinforcement, both people want to have that. That's how appetites are created, through positive reinforcement schedules. That's why people eat and drink things that don't make sense to other people. They've created a positive reinforcement schedule with that particular thing. So I hope this is helpful for you to move out of the deadbed syndrome. If you're in a sexless marriage, we have a great DVD. It goes through about 8 different reasons why, I'm not covering all of those, called Sexless and Married. And that can be really super helpful for you as well. The reason we create these resources, they're solutions. And oftentimes couples, they hit this place where their combined intelligence about that area. So like, suppose me and my wife, our combined intelligence about fixing a car is really 0. So we need someone to help us if we're gonna get our car fixed. In a marriage, if you hit a wall, especially like this, the kids are gone, you're making big decisions, and you're trying to figure out if you can spend the rest of your life with this person. If you're at a roadblock, get some care, get some of the materials I talked about, do a telephone session, see what's up, see if there's more that can be done so that you can truly live that happily ever after that you both want.